Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coast Connections. We're going to continue our discussion on decluttering your life from the inside out. We talked earlier about some of the causes, the emotional causes, the generational causes of clutter, but now we're going to help you to learn how to get rid of that clutter in your life. And to help us do that, we have an organizational and productivity expert, Melody Oshiro. Welcome.
Thank you.
And you're the president, CEO, and founder of Organize to Optimize,
Yes.
based in Parksville.
That's right.
Good for you.
Thank
That
you.
must be a very in-demand business these days, especially with all the Marie Kondo talk out there with her book, Tidying Up to Spark Joy.
Absolutely. She has inspired many of us to look at our spaces differently and our things differently. Yes.
And I think one of the things we will talk about is your living space a storage space, or is it actually a living space? So what would you define as clutter?
Well, clutter, in my view, is often too many things for the size of space that you have. And it could be unfinished projects. So I have clients, they might start a project and then it just never sees the light of day, ever. But they have good intentions and they feel guilty about not starting it again. And another definition is they have things that people give to them, but they don't really love them, but there is an attachment because the person that gave them the gift, they love. And so, there's different ways of looking at clutter, as I've mentioned, and so I just help guide clients through looking at their clutter differently.
Now you mentioned that when you assess a home, there's 4 different categories of clutter, Melody. What are those 4 categories?
Well, those would be the 3, some that I gave you just a moment ago. So looking at it from, how much clutter, like is it an untidy space? Is it bothering the client? So I don't go into a space and immediately look at the disheveled space and go, oh, you have lots of clutter. I actually want to wait until the client lets me know what the problem is. I don't just assume that they see it as clutter because it's a relative, and everyone has their own opinion.
Right.
So if they take me into their office space, I'll ask them what they feel the problem is. And so.
Because your idea of what might be organized and functional is not necessarily what the client thinks, right?
Absolutely.
We're all different.
That's right. So I go in there with objective eyes and non-judgmental eyes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's important. Yeah. So we talked about space, data, time, and stuff.
That's
Those are
right.
sort of the 4 different areas. Now you've got some really good before and after photos that you brought us, and I think these cover all 4 of those areas. So we'll just cue those photos now, Carolee.
Sure, yes.
And we'll take a look at the before and afters. Here we go, Melody.
Yeah, so this client called me because she had just moved into this new condo space and she had started to unpack, but because it's a life transition, often people have stuff from their previous home and they just don't know how to lay it out for their new space. So she has a home-based business and she had asked me to help her with her space. And what I asked her is, when we do complete your space, what are the things that you want to feel when you walk into your office? And she said, I want to feel in control and I want to be in my element. So that was our benchmark to know when we were when the situation was successful for her.
Let's look at the after photo and see if you achieved that. There we go. Wow, what a difference.
Yes. And
Wow.
so I did take measurements of her room and I did scale drawings to make sure that when I did move her desk, because I didn't want us to move the desk and bring in the bookcase unless I knew it would fit. So I did do scale drawings and moved them around in different ways and before we made those decisions. So,
Interesting. Yeah. And our next before shot.
So this is the same client actually, and again I mentioned she just moved, so she had a lot of boxes in that closet. And one of the things, when I did my assessment, I knew that she didn't have a place for her papers. And so that's a problem many of my clients have, is they don't have a workflow for paper because many of us are so digital today. And so what my goal was to help her, and it was her goal as well because she wanted to be in her element, right? So it was to give her a paper organizing system, and that I believe would be the next picture.
Okay. our next photo, there we go.
Yes, so in that is a combination of her home filing system, so everybody has home papers, and then also tax papers, I believe, in the middle, and then we were starting but didn't yet complete her business files.
Very nicely organized. Yeah. And our next before photo.
Yeah, so for this client, I did an assessment, and again, it's really to find out for the client what's not working for her. And she works from home as well, and one of the things I noticed is she wasn't able to get into her cupboard on the left-hand side. And also her printer was across the room, and there were many just little technical organizational quirks. So it's not necessarily that a client has, emotional issues. This wouldn't be the situation for that. It's more ergonomics.
Right.
And so what happens sometimes is clutter can build up because of that problem. Because she can't open her cupboard to use it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good point.
So we shifted her desk forward and moved her desk around.
Wow.
And she could actually use the space where the printer is now. We moved the printer down, and she could use that shelf for some of the things. It was just nice to have extra shelf space when you're working. So.
And our next before shot in the garage.
Yeah, so this is actually a storage space, and I like to, there's this misconception that people who hire me would be completely disorganized people, and actually this client is a very, very organized person, and life can actually become very busy when you have children, and she is like a master gardener who maybe just doesn't have enough time to tend to her own garden, so she hired me to help, and so this is part of a bigger project. So, but I'm kind of proud of the workshop area, because being a woman who doesn't necessarily work with tools, I was still able to transform, this to the next picture.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Makes me want to go in there and play with some of those tools.
Right. And just to speak to like the hammer being there, that was really important for my client. So we organized for what is important for our client, and she says, I'm always looking for my hammer and I want it very handy. So that's why we put it on the wall right there for her.
And the next one?
So again, this is the same client who I believe is very organized, but they have a very small home, and so with the seasonal turnaround, and we were turning over from summer to fall, and so they're a very active family as well. They do surfing, and they do like every sport under the sun. So it was really, they didn't have a home for some of their things in the new season that we were going into. So that was what the goal was to find a home and to shift some things around so seasonal items went to their storage locker.
And after, wow. Isn't that nice?
Yeah, so a lot of work goes into that. You really just have to pull everything out, and then you start to categorize and weed. And so there were donations that had to, we had arranged for to take, and other things as well in this process.
Nice. So Melody, when you go into a client's home, do you go room by room, or are you going like categories of items like books or clothes, or how do you approach it?
Well, as a professional organizer, we want to see the big picture. So usually the assessment process allows us, so even if they call me about their kitchen, I want to see other storage areas in their home, and they give us a walkthrough, and they tell us about usually there's more than one issue, but we talk about what their priorities are, and we need to see the big picture. So if I see too much in their kitchen, and I know that some of the stuff needs to go to a storage room, but the storage room is too full, I may suggest that we actually start with the storage room before we go into the kitchen, because we need to have an area where we can curate, and also if you want to take the roasting pan and move it to an area where, because you're only using it once or twice a year, it doesn't necessarily need to be in the kitchen. I need a place to put that.
I would imagine too, when you're going into a client's home, you end up sort of being part counselor as well, because often these are life changes people are going through. What are you finding?
Yeah, I've been doing this now for 2 years, and there's been many client scenarios that I've had. And you do build a connection with your client and you build trust. Right away, it's a non-judgmental scenario and they do share things with me. And I've had life experiences myself that, in that I believe there's got to be some give and take so that my clients feel normal and that we all have situations that can cause us to have unexpected things happen that caused the clutter. And so I just really try to take the edge off that for them. I'm not a counselor, but I do feel that they get comfort in my approach with them.
Nice, because it's a rather intimate relationship. Someone's inviting you into their home, into all the corners of their home,
Yep.
and that takes a lot of trust and
It does.
building rapport with that person.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, would you ever, when you're going in, do you actually clean up the clutter and the areas, or does the client do that?
Well, we work on it together actually,
Okay.
and I can sometimes be the coach. I would say 95% I'm the one that's kind of directing how things are being organized, like coaching them.
Yeah.
So I'll have the boxes ready and I'll say, this one will be for the donations, this one will be for refuse, and this one is for items that belong in a different room because we don't just dart into other rooms, we kind of compile them. And so I'm also asking the client questions. So we're looking at items and I'm asking them, is this something that you would like to keep? And so then sometimes that requires more questions because they're not really sure. I can usually tell by their face. Yeah,
If they're sparking that joy.
exactly. And we talk about that in the session. So if there is a pause, I go, okay, then we're going to put this to the side because we don't want to let anything go that you're not ready to let go of yet.
It's very respectful, that
Yes.
process, yeah.
And I believe that's part of where that trust comes in because I need to see their reactions. I can sense it right away.
Yeah. And how wonderful to have someone like you coach, like me, for example, through that process. Because that can be quite daunting. If your house has become more of a storage space, where do you begin? So the services you offer are really good in terms of we can do this together. It's, there's a time frame. Doesn't have to all be done in one day.
Yeah.
What's the longest project that you've had in one residence?
Sometimes 60 hours, and it's for different types of organizing, and you mentioned them earlier. So in one project, I organized 1,700 books.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a book collector.
Wow.
And then I segued into his office space because he also had a home. He was a developer and he worked from his home. So I organized his office for him. And he was a very organized person as well. So that conception again, that organized people will, hire you is
Right.
true.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Now you've brought your very handy, what you call an office purse,
Yes, I call it a home purse.
home purse. Do tell. This looks uber organized.
Yes, well, this is where I keep because I have a fragmented office. A fragmented office is where I have my office upstairs, but I live downstairs in my main area of my home. And so I say to my clients too, who have a lot of struggle with paper, I can notice right away if they're a teacher or a realtor, it could be because they have a fragmented office. That's why they can't find their papers.
Interesting.
So this allows me to keep all my papers that I'm working on in one place. And because I'm very data oriented, my file system may be smaller than some people's because I have our email has a lot of information that we don't always print out.
Right. Yeah.
And so these are my action files. And so I help clients come up with, some people call it a home command center.
I like that.
Yeah. And so whether you're a mom with many kids, you need to have a drop zone for active paper. And so I have a system where, your active papers are in a certain zone by priority. And then you have your reference papers as well. And also for projects as well, because projects are things like you want to have a renovation to your home or cooking turkey for 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it allows you to plan out and put a drop zone for your mail.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else have you got in that little tickle trunk
So
there,
in
Melody?
this tickle trunk here, like I said, because I have a fragmented office, I keep all my office supplies in here. So that way when I'm going up and down the stairs, when I get upstairs, I don't think, oh, I forgot this or I forgot that. So that's why it's so big. And actually in here, this is something that comes out, and because I'm visual, if I see what's in, I can see what's inside my pockets right away. And so that's another thing that when I'm talking to clients, I ask them if they're innies or outies. Do they like their papers out? Like, are they visual, or do they like things tucked away?
Right.
And I'm actually someone who does like things tucked away, but I have little cues, like color cues on my files, so that I am cued by color.
Very interesting. And so that, because it's mobile, you can take that anywhere in your home, or you can take it from your car to your other office. That's awesome.
Exactly.
And you can use that for other uses as well, not just paper, but something like that.
It could be a craft bin.
There you go.
Yes, it's a very handy, and they can come in very different sizes. It's like some people could even use a bin like this, because you can fit your files as well in a bin like this that I have here. Yep. Which I carried all my other interesting artifacts, organizing things in, like.
And clear bins, you prefer to use clear bins?
Yeah, and because I'm a functional organizer, first and foremost, it's not always about how beautiful everything looks. I don't want my clients to feel that they have to spend hundreds of dollars on containers. So you can get containers like this, at the dollar store, at Walmart. And I tell clients we try to use what they already have on hand.
I like that.
Rather than invest.
Yeah.
But there's certain situations where I do recommend a small investment of clear containers, because then they can see, like even in organizing a kitchen, you can organize different spices and food. Like, how you get spices and they're all in the packaging, right?
Yeah.
And so you can just bring the container down and put it on the counter, rather than having them helter-skelter in your cupboard, so it kind of contains and organizes them.
Great idea. Yeah.
Yes.
Good idea.
And then if you want to go a little bit more high scale in organizing, I usually say to clients, after we know everything is purged and you know exactly what you have, then you can invest in some nicer products that maybe cost a little bit more. And again, because you can see through this product right in there, then things don't get hidden in the dark hole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So if there's craft supplies in here, for example, and it's on a shelf, they can see through, and it triggers them on what they put in there, on what the category is. Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier, like clutter is like unfinished projects as well. So somebody who is a crafter or does artwork, how do you really get those types of rooms organized when it's sort of a little bit of creative chaos? You don't want to sort of ruin that energy, but you need to get it contained.
Well, I want to always focus on what the client's goal is. So if their goal is to make sure that, say they want to be able to walk in there and feel a certain way, I'm kind of gauging them when I can see there's a lot of unfinished projects. We just talk through that reality. And if they're still not ready to let it go, then they're aware that they haven't reached what their goal is. But on the most part, it does prompt them to be realistic. And so maybe they did rubber stamping and scrapbooking 20 years ago, and they're no longer really interested in it. So we just talk through, that avoidance, because usually it's avoidance of pain, in terms of it's difficult to let the past go sometimes. And it's nice to be able to talk with someone about that. And then I'm really proud of my clients, because so many of them have taken that difficult step to let go of things that were really important to them at one time in their life.
So how do they decide to get rid of certain sentimental items? Like, are you suggesting that they don't really need the physical item, but maybe take a photo of it and have that? Would that be one of the solutions, or?
Well, it depends on how long they work with me, but I've noticed that a lot of my clients, like if I've had like 5 or 6 sessions with them, this core muscle strength that starts to happen. I believe that the more you let go of things, that core muscle that they talk about in yoga, it starts to build. And they notice that they didn't miss. I'll bring it to their attention. Do you remember when you let go of another item that now you don't think about it, you're not missing it. And they do acknowledge that it gets easier and easier as time goes on.
Very good. That's why it's a muscle, not a skill.
Yeah, and it's okay to put things to the side. I say sometimes I put things myself in a holding zone in my garage, and it's going to go to donation, but I have a 1 month, I go once a month, so I have 30 days to change my mind.
Oh, okay. How often do you change your mind?
Every once in a while.
Yeah.
Because I'm always thinking, you know, can I use it in my camper? You know, I don't always want to give away certain clutter, so I'm really warn my clients about not necessarily giving a lot of their things to their kids, because it could cause a problem for them in their environments.
Right. And what about things that you inherit, like family things that may not quite be your thing? That's kind of awkward. What would you advise someone?
Well, Marie Kondo actually has, you know, does it spark joy? And I also say to my clients that, do you really feel that that person would want you to not be happy, right? Or if they were given a gift, I say to the client, so when they gave you that gift when you were 10, did they really mean for you to have it for your entire life?
That's a great question. Like inheriting someone's china, you know, 12 place setting china. We just don't eat like that anymore. And that might be something you might use every 2 years or something. So you'd feel really reluctant to pass that on when it was your great grandmother's china.
Yeah, so I've had a few clients with that situation, and we talk about whether they can actually use it for their daily eating. Like I don't think china needs to just be for special occasions anymore. And another one is just to keep one teacup, or to maybe give out the teacups as gifts. I've gotten teacups just as a gift from someone, and I thought it was a great idea to have it with a plant in it.
Yeah, that's nice.
So it's being creative about how you can use these things.
And still have the memory there in the house, but you don't need the, 18 plates and cups and saucers.
Absolutely.
One little saucer with a pretty aesthetic thing in it.
Yes.
Now, Melody, what about the quintessential junk drawer? We all have those.
Yeah.
Do you have a junk drawer?
Yes.
You do? Okay. How's your junk drawer different from most people's?
Well, I have categories to a certain degree in there, and I really evaluate, when you assess your junk drawer, what you want to do is make sure it's stuff that really belongs there. So when I did my first organizing of my junk drawer, there was many things that should have actually been in my medicine cabinet, or they should be in the garage. So I need a tape measure, I need screwdrivers, but there's things that were in my junk drawer that I did not need. So it's just really evaluating what you need handy, because that's what I believe a junk drawer is those handy items.
Right.
Could be reading glasses. For everybody, it would be different.
And what about purging clothes? Any tips on that? We all have sort of closets full of clothes that we don't necessarily wear all the time, but what are your clothing tips?
Yeah, so again, it's based on the client. So if you go into a client's home and they have a huge amount of shoes, I don't judge that. I first make sure that that's an issue for the client. If it's not, it's like the 1,700 books. If they have storage for it, and it works for them, then great. But if a client says that that's why they're calling me, is to help them through that, then we would begin by having a plan. So we always analyze and then have a plan of where we are going to take the clothes. So do they want to consign them? Do they want to donate them? Or there could be even seasonal things that maybe they should hang on to, and we just need to, if there's too many clothes, maybe we can put some of them away and we can squeeze. I don't know if you know if there's a product where you can people use them when they go on vacations, so they get more room in their vacuum.
Oh, vacuum packs.
Yes.
Right.
So if they're really limited on space and they need the clothes, then we can use strategies like that. So we have a plan, and then in terms of, I had one client, we steam cleaned and got all her clothes ready for a consignment. And that person actually, we scheduled her to come to her home to see the clothes rather than packing them to the consignment store.
That's a good idea. Yeah. And what about tips for garages? Those are usually one of the major storage areas of the house.
Yeah, so you want to make sure you have zones in your garage, and it depends on whether you have children and they're in organized sports. So I organized for one family, and we had an area for the kids' organized sports like hockey and baseball, and then another zone for just activities they would do at home. And then they also used their garage as a pantry as well, a secondary pantry. So possibly I could have reorganized their kitchen and we could have moved those food items in there. But so anyways, it's about creating zones in the garage and making sure you're using all the space functionally. So I always say to clients, use their vertical space when possible.
Good idea, more shelving.
Yeah, for bikes if you can. There's different ways you can mount bikes, and for workshops in there using hook systems, there's some really great systems that allow you to have your kids' items and things hooked on the wall.
Yeah.
So
Hooks rather than coat hangers, for example.
yeah, so you can get different products where I love them because as the stages in life change, the hooks and the items in these containers will change as well.
Now, have you ever had a client where there was really not much you could do because they weren't willing to part with things? Yeah.
Yes. And so we had 2 sessions, and the first session went really, really well because there always are items that people are willing to give up. But there is situations as in your previous guests where there is difficult situations of letting go. And so there is special training through like Professional Organizers of Canada, which I'm a member of, and Chronic Disorganization, that's another organization. And so there are professional organizers who have that training to work with clients who have a psychologist that they're working with at the same time.
Wonderful. Yeah. Very good. Well, Melody, you've given us a whole lot of tips here tonight and some insights into what clutter is and what clutter isn't. And I think I want you to come over to my house.
I will.
I'll admit, those weren't my before and after photos.
Right.
Thank you. And if
Thank you.
clients want to get a hold of you, organizetooptimize.ca
Yes.
is your website. And you'll have a personal consultation with them and take it from there. Thank
Yes, I
you for
will.
helping
Thank
us
you.
declutter from the inside out. And we look forward to having you back for a future episode.
Great.
Thanks for joining us on Coast Connections, and we'll see you next time.